it's Mrs. Jarvis back again for lesson 5 of our ARK curriculum, and today we're going to be looking at dealing with disappointment. And the reason that we've added this into the hope part of the curriculum is that if we don't deal with disappointment well, it can actually rob us of hope. And we've talked about the importance of having high hope levels in our life, and when we don't deal with disappointment well, it actually lowers our hope levels. So let's dig in and see what disappointment is. So disappointment is that feeling of sadness that you get, or that feeling where you're not very pleased because something that you expected hasn't worked out, something that you hoped for hasn't happened. And it can leave you feeling, well, like this guy here, a bit sad. So I'm just going to give you a pause for thought a minute. Have you ever felt disappointed? And if so, what did it feel like for you? So feel free to pause the video here if you want to and just have a think about it. So I wonder what it was that disappointed you. There can be many things, can't there? But I bet it didn't leave you feeling happy. I know that I faced lots of disappointment over the years, sometimes little disappointments, sometimes really big disappointments, but they've always made me feel things like sadness, or sometimes anger, sometimes frustration, sometimes feeling quite low. And so that's why it's important to learn how to deal with those things well, because we've talked in previous ARK sessions about the importance of dealing with our emotions and how we're feeling inside. And if we don't deal with them well, they can build up and then explode, or they can build up and destroy our hope levels. So what are the things that might cause disappointment? This is Shrek. And I'm sure many of you will have seen the film about Shrek, but if you haven't, Shrek actually goes and rescues a princess from a tall tower guarded by a dragon. And the princess Fiona, for many years while she was trapped inside this tower, dreamt of being rescued by a handsome prince on a on a white horse. And then when Shrek rescued her and took his helmet off, she was faced with an ogre. And as you can imagine, having had dreams of Prince Charming and then being faced with, well, Shrek, she was really, really disappointed. So sometimes we can have dreams that we've dreamt about or hopes that we've longed for a long time, and they don't work out the way that we expect them to, and that can lead us to feeling really disappointed. Let's have a look at what else can. So sometimes it can be other people that disappoint us. This little boy here is looking very disappointed because he didn't get what he wanted for Christmas. And I'm sure we've all been there at some point or another, haven't we? But sometimes we can put our hope in other people. We can put hope in friends or family or other relationships, and they don't work out the way that we imagine they would. And that can lead us to feelings of disappointment as well. And we can also be disappointed in ourselves. I felt like that on a number of occasions, I have to say, when I've realised that I've done things or I've said things or I've thought things that just aren't me or just aren't what I would like to do. Now, it's really important when we're disappointed in ourselves that we recognise it, and that we put things right if we need to put things right. We've talked in previous weeks and previous ARK sessions about the importance of clearing up our mess. Now, we are going to disappoint ourselves sometimes because none of us are perfect. Other people are going to disappoint us sometimes because they're not perfect. Situations are going to disappoint us sometimes because the world isn't perfect. So what do we do when we're feeling really disappointed? I think the key thing is to remember that there's always hope. Even if what we hope for hasn't worked out the way we imagined it, it doesn't mean that we just give up hoping, or we give up dreaming, or we give up on relationships, or we give up on ourselves. I love this saying. It says, carve a tunnel of hope through the dark mountain of disappointment. And sometimes when we're disappointed, it can feel big and it can feel dark. but actually there's always a way through. So let's have a look at the way through disappointment. Well, the first thing to do is actually understand that at some point in our lives, we're all going to face disappointment. Big disappointment, small disappointment, but we are all going to face it at some point. What we need to do is actually talk about it, acknowledge that we're feeling disappointed. We can talk about how it's made us feel, angry, sad, cross, frustrated. We've talked about the importance of dealing with those emotions in some of our previous ARK sessions, and the importance of not leaving them inside, undealt with, but dealing with them really well. The next thing we need to do, if we're feeling very, very angry or cross, is to find some of those activities that help us just to calm down, because we can't make good decisions about dealing with disappointment when we're feeling very upset or very, very angry. And we gave you lots of tools and lots of ideas about how to do that in our last ARK sessions. So go back and see if you can remember some of those. And you can even look up online about helpful ways to deal with disappointment. The other thing that's important is actually sometimes we just need to think of a solution. If something hasn't worked out, then maybe there's another way that we can do things. If someone's upset you, or if you've upset someone or someone's upset you, it's important to forgive those people. If you've let yourself down, it's important to forgive yourself. Because as we said in previous ARK sessions, if you hold on to unforgiveness, it makes you messy on the inside and it upsets you being able to move forward. It's important to see the bigger picture, and sometimes you might need to ask for some help in looking for the bigger picture. But like with the story of Shrek, she was very disappointed, Fiona, when she looked and she saw Shrek and it wasn't the Prince Charming that she'd imagined. But if you watch it through to the end of the story, actually he was perfect for her and she didn't realise it at that time. So sometimes you need to wait and see the bigger picture and then see, didn't need to be disappointed after all, or I was disappointed, but now look how it's worked out better. Sometimes we need to make some changes because the reason we're disappointed is because what we've expected of other people or the situations in our lives or even ourselves, we can have very high expectations of ourselves, have been too high. And sometimes we need to change those expectations because they've not been fair expectations. And the reason we've ended up being disappointed is we've been expecting wrong things of people or situations. But I think one of the biggest ways through disappointment is to be thankful. And again, in previous ARK sessions, we've talked about cultivating an attitude of gratitude, and that means having an attitude of being thankful and grateful for what you have. Now, when you're disappointed, it's very easy to focus on what you haven't got or what didn't happen. And then if all you focus on is that, you forget about all the amazing things that are happening and have gone well and that you can be thankful for. So it's very important when you're working through disappointment to be thankful for the things that are going well and that are happening and that you do have. And then last of all, let it go. Like that famous Frozen song, let it go. Because when we hold on to disappointment, it can make us angry, which can turn into bitterness. None of us want to be like that. And it can also stop us hoping and dreaming for the future. We don't want that either, because as we've talked about right from the beginning of this hope thing, there is a plan, there is a purpose in our life, and we want to be hope-filled about that. So sometimes it can be helpful even to write down things that you've been disappointed and angry about. Write down everything it made you feel, and then you can scrunch it up in a ball and throw it away in a bin. That helps you to show that you're not holding on to it anymore, but you're actually letting it go. So let's see what the Bible says about disappointment. Well, in Romans 5 verse 5, it says, hope does not disappoint. Now, we've talked about the fact that sometimes the things we hope for do disappoint, and that's because we often put our hope in people, in ourselves, and in situations that aren't perfect. But the Bible says that if you choose to put your hope in God, that's the kind of hope that doesn't disappoint. And it says here, God is bigger than your disappointment or pain. He has a plan and it's good. So you can choose to believe that if you want to. And that's the kind of hope that will never disappoint, because the Bible says that God never changes and the things that he says stay the same forever, and that he's faithful and he keeps his promises. So that's the kind of hope that never disappoints. Now, I said earlier about the importance of seeing the bigger picture, and C.S. Lewis, he's a famous writer. He wrote The Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe, which some of you might have read. And he says hardships are often prepare ordinary people for extraordinary destiny. And what he's saying here is that sometimes we will face hardships in life and disappointments in life, but sometimes they can prepare us as we handle those well and we learn how to deal with disappointment and difficult things that happen. They actually prepare us for going on to bigger things in our future. So they're an important part of life. I love this. Don't let today's disappointments cast a shadow over tomorrow's dreams. And I said right at the beginning that it's so important to deal with disappointment well, because it can reduce your hope levels if you don't. So we don't want something that's been disappointing to stop us from being able to hope and dream for the future. So we need to keep going, pressing on into the things that we're hoping and dreaming for. And last but not least, can I remind you again that hope is a choice. And Henry Ward Beecher says, one's best success comes after their greatest disappointments. So just because you've faced disappointment in life, just because you've had challenges that have been disappointing and difficult, it doesn't mean that you stop there. You can go on, you can have great success after the biggest disappointment. The key is dealing with disappointment really well. So there's going to be some activities that you can dive in a little deeper into all of this stuff. I'd recommend that you do that. But have a go this week if you're feeling disappointed about anything, about going through those things, dealing with it well, getting what's inside out so you're not carrying it anymore, and try and make it a lifestyle, because it's really, really worth it. So until next week, have a lovely week. You're all kinds of amazing, and I'll look forward to seeing you then. Bye.